Well, you guys have been asking me non-stop on how I feel about Donkey Kong Bonanza. Literally every video and stream. The question I've been getting is, Max, how are you feeling about Donkey Kong Bonanza? You waited 5 days outside in New York City for this game. This must be one of the greatest video games of your life since you waited so long. Right, Max? We need to know. Well, I'll be honest with y'all, I have not finished the game. However, I've put a lot of time into it that I feel like I can make an impression video on how I feel about the game. Because I feel like by the time I am finished with this game, it's gonna be something that you guys are probably not gonna care much about in terms of how I'm feeling on the game. So I decided it was best to give an impression video because I've played a lot of Donkey Kong. I have a lot of thoughts, good and bad, regarding how I feel on this game. So without further ado, let's jump right into talking about Donkey Kong Bonanza. But first, I have to ask, super close to 22,000 subscribers. We're less than 400 away. If you are not subscribed yet, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm trying to hit it by the end of July, and we're like super close to July, so I don't know if it's gonna be possible. It'll be right if we don't hit it, but it'd be nice if we hit it. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. So the Nintendo Switch 2 finally gets that first-party single-player experience that everyone has been waiting for since the system released. There's been a great debate if Mario Kart World should have been the launch title for the Nintendo Switch 2 or Donkey Kong Bonanza. And it's led to a lot of interesting points, arguments, all that on the good old Twitter app. And honestly, I like having that single player experience. I think that's something key to be on the Nintendo Switch 2 day one. But I also understand why Nintendo went with Mario Kart first instead of something like Donkey Kong Bonanza. It definitely feels like a game that you play that you're like, wow, this should be on the system day one. But Mario Kart always made more sense from a sales number perspective. I mean, have you seen how well Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has been selling onto Switch 1? Made sense to launch the Switch 2 with that. But the good thing I feel like with Donkey Kong Bonanza is that we did not have to wait too long for that single player exclusive game because this comes out 1 month after the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I was pumped for Donkey Kong Bonanza, but I was at the same time worried about this game. Obviously, when the game was revealed, you know, a lot of it was just smashing the ground, destroying objects. And, you know, I was pumped because I was like, whoa, this could be like Nintendo's response to like having like a Hulk game, and Donkey Kong is the perfect character for that. But some of the footage that Nintendo showed through like the treehouse, for example, the gameplay definitely looked like it was just going to be smashing the ground. Nothing else to it. You're gonna be finding things through the ground. And I'm happy to say that, well, that type of gameplay does exist within this game depending the world that you're in. The entire game was not that, and I was presently pumped to be seeing that. In fact, I still like that there's a little bit of elements into that. I'm just glad that the whole game's premise isn't that, which I had a feeling it wasn't going to be. But Nintendo, if I'm to be honest, when it comes to the Switch 2 games, their marketing for these games have been very poor. I feel like Mario Kart World, in terms of what it offered through the trailers and what its gameplay was, I think Nintendo did a horrible job marketing it. The same thing goes with Donkey Kong Bonanza. There was so much to this game that was not shown off through directs, treehouse footage, all that stuff that honestly, in my opinion, should have been shown off because it offers so much gameplay variety here and gives you that option to have more ways to play, if that makes sense. I feel like the stuff that they showed was not a good presentation for the game at all. And I'm hoping that that's not going to be an ongoing thing with Nintendo, because it makes you wonder, hey, the game I'm buying, is it gonna be good or not? It really throws that question out there more often, because I feel like as a consumer now, I don't know what I'm really buying at this point. With how Mario Kart's promotion has been, and now Donkey Kong, it's really poor in my opinion. After going through the tutorial stage of Donkey Kong Bonanza, you enter a world known as Layer Lagoon. And guys, I gotta be honest here. As I played through Layer Lagoon, I was like, oh my gosh, this game might suck. I'm going to be honest here. I think Lagoon Layer was one of the worst worlds you could have opened the game up with. In terms of what that world was, It felt so bland. I felt like it also just advertised the fact that maybe Donkey Kong was just going to be a completely smashing game where you're just pounding the ground to find certain things and not have any gameplay to it. Layer Lagoon was the worst thing to open this game up, and it had me super concerned as I played through it. And this is going to be probably the wildest comparison I can make when it comes to it, so I hope this makes sense. But when I played Layer Lagoon, I felt like I was in the middle of playing like a 2D Mario game and they threw me in World 5. Like, you know how you're playing a Mario game and there's always that one world that, you know, they're kind of just like, I don't really know what to do here. It's like that World 5 that you would play in a Mario game. That's what I compare Layer Lagoon, because there's so much with that world that I did not like. I felt like from a gameplay perspective, it looked really poor and made the game look like it was not gonna offer much. But the good news is, once I got through Layer Lagoon, the game was absolutely phenomenal. Every area that I had visited after that got me so pumped to continue playing the game, as each world offered different perspectives and offered more gameplay options, showed you more things that you can do with Bananza forms, for example, and just overall visually was looking very amazing. And at this point, finding the bananas in these worlds was becoming very enjoyable. I had way more fun finding these bananas in Donkey Kong Bonanza than I did with Super Mario Odyssey with its moons. Now, listen, I'll be honest, some of the banana placement in Bonanza, it's kind of weird to say banana placement on top of saying the word Bonanza. Some of the layouts that they had where they put these bananas was pretty poor, I'll be honest. It's kind of like the Super Mario Odyssey moons. The placement was all over the place because there's just so many. But I still had more enjoyment finding them, especially as I was getting close to adding a skill point to it. There felt more rewarding to grab a banana than something like a moon in Super Mario Odyssey. And it got me super pumped to continue collecting things through these games. Let's talk about the skill tree. There is a skill tree into Donkey Kong Bonanza. And as I pointed out, if you find a banana, you get a point, or you get enough bananas, you get a point to go towards this skill tree. Now, some of the abilities in here I found was super helpful in the game. I liked some of the options that it had. Like, one of the things that you can unlock is the Donkey Kong recovery move from Super Smash Bros. I don't know if this was intentional, but it was still cool to see, and definitely something I did not expect to see in something like this. And I'm wondering if, I mean, I know Coleman has a debate if this is a collectathon or not, but I think it's, in my opinion, still a collectathon. Coleman has a very good point that he might bring up into this video on why Donkey Kong Bonanza isn't a collectathon. It's honestly a very good point and something you guys should actually hear.
For a game to be considered a collectathon, collecting has to be tied to progression, and because in Bonanza it isn't considered a collectathon. I know that might seem a little bit controversial at first, but when you take, for instance, something like Banjo-Kazooie, Donkey Kong 64, Mario 64, all of those games require you to collect in order to progress. This is not considered a collectathon because you can beat the game, and as I have, without collecting a single banana. Or anything for that matter. You could just go to the end of the game. Kinda makes you second guess if this whole freedom thing that Nintendo's been doing since Breath of the Wild is still as novel as it was in 2017.
But I'm wondering if this will be a new ongoing thing that Nintendo does in their games with something like a 3D Mario, for example, if it's gonna have a skill tree like this. Because if you've noticed, when you play something like Donkey Kong Bonanza, there's themes of Odyssey in here, there's themes of Breath of the Wild, especially with the challenge courses. Those feel very inspired by the Zelda Shrine. It just makes me wonder if this is something we're gonna see with more of these 3D Nintendo games. Obviously, we saw Kirby go 3D. I saw people make comparisons of Kirby into this, which I'm still trying to understand that part of the game. Maybe it's the abilities? I don't know. But I'm definitely curious to see how far we go into something like 3D Mario, because obviously that's gonna happen for the Switch too. I wonder if that skill tree stuff is gonna be something that gets implemented. I don't know. I have so many questions about that. Let's talk about the boss fights. These boss fights, I don't even know how this got approved by Nintendo. I'm just gonna be honest, straightforward here. These bosses are ridiculously easy. They should not be this easy. In fact, Coleman made a pretty good statement regarding it. He said that these boss fights from Donkey Kong makes Mario games look like Dark Souls games in terms of difficulty. It's absolutely insane how fast you can beat these boss fights. In fact, all the time I have done Bananza form and have beaten it within that first time of using Bananza form. I've even done it without having to use Bananza form. I don't know what was going on with this because, like, I know Nintendo games, they can be easy, very easy, but I was just surprised to see this decision be made, especially with the type of game that Donkey Kong is already. I would have thought they would have wanted to add that element of difficulty into there, because the boss fights are honestly the easiest thing in this entire game, which should not be the case. It should be, honestly, the most difficult thing in this game. I want to talk about another thing that I'm really loving when it comes to Bananza. They offer so much when it comes to these challenge courses. There's all types of challenge courses when it comes to getting bananas. It is incredible, some of these options that they have out there. Now, I will say that there's a lot of challenge courses here. There are some, particularly with some of the enemy ones that you have, that can be ridiculously easy and just kind of just there. They did no work to it. And that's where I bring the Breath of the Wild comparison here, because you can tell that these challenge courses were made under the idea of how Zelda and its shrines work in Breath of the Wild. And in fact, I compare it a lot to that, especially with how some of these things are. As I said, there is so many of these challenge courses out there to where you're gonna find some really good ones, and you're gonna find some that are just obviously there just to be there, kind of how with the Zelda shrines. You find really good ones, and then you find ones that are just like, yeah, figure it out. I think it is really cool to see Nintendo bring this, and it honestly has been probably my favorite thing out of Bananza is doing these courses. Especially when you go to the Bananza ones. With the Zebra one in particular, especially in the ice world, that has been my favorite ones to do. I love the type of gameplay that it offered with the Zebra and how it made it to where the Bananza form felt kind of important to use rather than, well, they are important to use, but I felt like these challenge courses made them even more important to use, and I loved how the Zebra one was used in comparison. Now, the other forms that I've seen so far, they've been just kind of when it comes to those courses, but the Zebra ones have been very fun. I've definitely enjoyed this part of Donkey Kong so much. And then you have some like the Nostalgia Country ones is what they're called, where they're like 2D Donkey Kong levels. I like what they're doing. They add so much gameplay to Donkey Kong Bananza and just adds hours and hours amount of content into here already. Especially the ones where you have to find the 3 bananas in them. I have found some that have been honestly very difficult to find that 3rd banana. And they've been in places that I just was not expecting and just didn't make sense. But it's been cool to experience that. I am going to be completely honest with you guys though. I have experienced this a few times with the game, and I think it's pretty unacceptable for this game to have it. And it was something that I pointed out when I played the Donkey Kong Bananza demo. That is the frame rate. Now, there has been frame rate dips like crazy in this game. Well, I can't say crazy. It hasn't been crazy. It's actually been less than what the demo has been. But what I will say is I've had some... I feel like when I say crazy, it makes it sound like it's happening nonstop. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying with the type of frame rate dips that I've had have been really crazy. Like, for example, there are some courses that you will find in Donkey Kong where you're going to be getting gold. And you got like 30 seconds to get gold. Destroying the gold has had the game's frame rate go all over the place. And I feel that it's very unacceptable for the second Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive game to come out to have this happen on the system, especially when it's coming from Nintendo. I feel like third parties, it shouldn't be happening with third parties, but when third parties have it happen, I give them a little bit of a pass. But when it comes from Nintendo, when it's their system, especially in the first year of the system, the second game to come out, there should not be frame rate dips in here. And I did not like the fact that Nintendo addressed it and the response that they gave. You guys are going to think that I'm joking when they said this, But Nintendo literally said that they prioritized fun over frame rate. I don't know. I feel like that was a really bad statement and just shows that the frame rate, it's something that exists in here. I've had it happen when I'm pulling up the map, exploring new worlds, destroying items. I think it is unacceptable to have that. And it does feel like an improvement from what I played from the demo. Again, though, this is something that should not be happening, and I hope Nintendo finds a way to fix this on a future Nintendo Switch 2 update. I hope it's not going to take something like the Nintendo Switch 3 to come out and they make a Switch 3 edition of Bananza to fix the frame rate, because that's ridiculous and just, in my opinion, unacceptable. I do love the amount of hours that you can sink into playing this game when you are 100%ing these worlds. There's so much crazy things to do, things that the game asks you to do to get that 100% achievement on worlds, that I think is just so fun to see and adds so many hours to what was already a pretty decently long game. You're definitely getting a lot of content for $70. I will definitely say that here with this game. Lastly, the thing that I want to say when it comes to Donkey Kong Bonanza, it is 100% the best Nintendo Switch 2 game to get for this system. It's something that I can highly recommend. In terms of a score, I can't give y'all a score as I have not finished the game yet. But I wanted to get you guys an impression video out, as it's been something y'all have been asking for. So I want to hear from you guys. How are you feeling about Donkey Kong Bonanza? Do you think it's a good game? I think it's fun from what I've played. Is it a Game of the Year contender? I do think it will be a contender in the Game Awards. However, I don't think it's going to win. However, Astrobot did win last year, and I feel like with the type of people that are now on that board, because we know the type of people that are on the Game Awards board, and to be completely honest with you, some of the people that are in control of nominating what wins Game of the Year, some of those people should not be in that board. And it wouldn't surprise me if this game won Game of the Year because of the amount of people they have into that. But, I mean, I'm not saying it's not deserving of it. I'm just saying I know a lot of people are expecting Expedition 33 to win. So it'll be interesting. There's so many games out there. Split Fiction, Death Stranding 2, Expedition 33, Donkey Kong, and then there's still more games to be coming out this year. I think the Game Awards are going to be very interesting this year. I definitely think it's a contender. I wouldn't be surprised if it won, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it didn't win. But guys, I have been talking for way too much. Make sure to backslash that subscribe button, like the video, check out the Twitter, Instagram, Discord, all that good stuff that's in the description below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace. Time to play more Donkey Kong Bonanza. In fact, this is the first copy of Donkey Kong Bonanza that was sold here at Nintendo New York. So, I mean, I don't know, that might not be a flex to you guys. In fact, you guys are probably going to make fun of me that I waited 5 days for this, but it is what it is.